Hey guys, tonight we're heading back, way back, to the shimmering banks of the Nile, where the air is thick with heat and incense, and your pillow is made of carved wood. You're about to spend 24 hours in ancient Egypt, and spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this. Between the sun, the sand, the social hierarchy, and the questionable hygiene standards, it's going to be a long, dusty ride. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and what time you're tucking in tonight. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You open your eyes to the low hum of buzzing insects. Your face is sticky with sweat, and the ceiling above you, if you can call it that, is a patchwork of woven reeds and rough mud. Welcome to your new home, a mud brick box sealed tighter than your fridge's vegetable drawer. The smell hits you next. Not bad, exactly. Just earthy. There's a mix of clay dust, dried dung used for fuel, a faint perfume of ancient sweat, and something that might be fish. Or incense. Or both. Your bed? A woven mat stretched over wooden beams. Not exactly memory foam, but hey, it doesn't collapse under you, and that's a win. Already, the heat is pushing down on you like a particularly needy cat. It's barely dawn, and your little house has spent the whole night soaking up warmth like a clay pizza oven. No windows. No air conditioning. Just a doorway covered with a linen cloth that flaps uselessly in the breeze you're still hoping will show up. You sit up, ducking instinctively because your ceiling is barely taller than you are. Outside, a rooster crows, goats complain, and someone nearby is loudly coughing out what sounds like their entire respiratory system. You pull on your day clothes, which are also your night clothes, and feel your linen tunic stick to your back before you've even stood up. Historians still argue whether most ancient Egyptians woke up with the sunrise or were already working in the fields by then. Either way, you're late. And very thirsty. Your first task is locating water. There's a jug near the door, but it's warm, sandy, and probably shared with 3 other family members. You take a cautious sip anyway, and try to ignore the way something gritty slides across your tongue. Stepping outside, your bare feet instantly remind you that the streets are made of sun-baked earth, hard, uneven, and already hot enough to make you flinch. You shuffle toward the courtyard, trying not to step on anything sharp, spiny, or alive. Around you, your neighbors are also stirring. A woman dumps ash from a small cooking hearth. A child chases chickens with a determined scowl. And someone you assume is a grandmother is muttering at a goat like it owes her money. Your home is part of a cluster. Tiny one-room dwellings packed together like dusty bricks in a beehive. You don't own it, of course. Most people don't. But your family's been here for generations, and the place has accumulated enough charm and insects to feel cozy in its own claustrophobic way. There's no privacy, walls are thin, and gossip travels faster than the Nile during flood season. Last night's argument 2 doors down, everyone heard it. The smell from someone's failed beer fermentation, everyone smelled it. And here's the kicker, you haven't even had breakfast yet. You make your way to the communal hearth space. A teenage boy is already pounding grain with a wooden pestle the size of a canoe paddle. The rhythmic thump-thump-thump is soothing in its own sleepy way, until you remember you're next in line. Grinding grain is the Egyptian version of a morning workout, except it ends in blisters and probably a bit of stone grit in your meal. Still, it's tradition. You press your hands to the handle and start grinding, slow, steady, achy. As you work, you catch sight of something scuttling in the dust beside you. A beetle. Big. shiny, rolling a ball of dung with impressive commitment. You watch it for a second, vaguely wondering if it's considered a good omen. Scarabs are sacred here, after all. Maybe it's a sign your bread won't come out entirely inedible. By the time you've ground enough flour to make a small flatbread, your shoulders are sore and your stomach is growling. You smear the paste onto a hot clay slab and hope it doesn't stick. Meanwhile, someone pours you a cup of beer. Not the party kind, the breakfast kind. Egyptian beer is cloudy, thick, and barely alcoholic, made from half-fermented bread. You sip it, trying not to wince at the chewiness. It's cold comfort, but comfort nonetheless. A quick aside, Egypt's climate did have its perks. The dry air preserved things incredibly well, everything from papyrus scrolls to mummies. But it also meant you were constantly battling dryness, dust, and dehydration. Lip balm hadn't been invented, and you're 87% sure your lips are already cracking. In a moment of optimism, you try to splash some water on your face from a nearby basin. Instead, a fly flies directly into your mouth. Welcome to ancient Egypt, where personal boundaries mean nothing and insects are your co-workers. As you chew your gritty bread, still hacking from the surprise fly protein, a familiar voice calls your name. Time to head out for the day's labor. Which, spoiler alert, is going to involve a lot more heat, heavy lifting, and humility. And just in case you were wondering, yes, the sun hasn't even hit its full power yet. You glance up at the sky. That soft, golden glow? It's a lie. A trap. An omen of the baking inferno to come. Good morning. You've got about 16 hours of this ahead. You follow the trail of dusty footprints down a narrow alley, ducking under drying linens and trying not to trip over the neighbor's goat, which is exactly where it always is, right in the way. The sun is officially up now, which means it's already too hot for anything that requires effort. Unfortunately, your entire job description today is effort. But first, breakfast has to finish having its revenge. That gritty bread and beer combo? It's settling in like a particularly bad roommate. Your stomach churns as you trudge toward the edge of your village, where the labor crews gather. You silently vow to chew more thoroughly tomorrow. Not that it'll help. As you reach the main path, you're struck again by the sheer sound of everything. Donkeys braying, women shouting instructions to children, reed flutes whining off-key somewhere in the distance. It's like an ancient version of rush hour, except instead of traffic, it's just a lot of people barefoot and sweaty, trying not to drop baskets of onions. The Nile glitters in the distance, wide and serene, like it hasn't just flooded your neighbor's granary 2 weeks ago. But the real action is along the edge of town, where a team of men is already loading supplies onto a small cart pulled by 2 unimpressed oxen. You know the look. Those oxen have seen things. Get in line. Someone barks. You recognize him, your work crew supervisor, a man who looks like he's been carved out of driftwood and bad moods. You hurry into place. Today's assignment, construction duty. Specifically, you'll be helping haul supplies for a new temple addition. Not exactly pyramid-level grandeur, but still hot, heavy, and supervised by people who take their job a little too seriously for your liking. Now, ancient Egypt had a surprisingly well-organized labor system. Workers weren't slaves in the way modern people often assume. Many were paid laborers, given food, shelter, and sometimes even medical care. Historians still argue whether the average worker was proud to serve the gods or just really into free beer rations. Either way, you're here now, sweaty, underfed, and 100% regretting every decision that led to this moment. You shoulder a sack of limestone chips, the the strap digging into your skin like a sarcastic tattoo. The weight is shocking, mostly because it's not just stone in the bag. There are tools, rope, and possibly someone's lunch wedged in there too. You start walking. Slowly. The sun crawls up the sky like a smug cat, and the temperature goes from toasty to your sandals might melt. Speaking of which, your sandals are already disintegrating. They're just flattened palm fiber tied to your feet with string, and every step kicks up more dust than a camel race. A guy next to you, let's call him Hori, because everyone here is named either Hori or Kemet or something with a lot of vowels, grins and asks if you're new. You grunt something that sounds vaguely social. He laughs and says, "You'll get used to it." You will not. As you walk, a line of acacia trees offers the illusion of shade. You make a beeline for it, only to remember that acacia trees are mostly thorns. One scratches your arm as you pass. It'll probably get infected. You try not to think about it. Lunch isn't for another few hours, and already your tunic is soaked. The linen clings to your back like a second skin, which sounds poetic until you realize it's also been rubbing your armpits raw. You smell terrible. Everyone does. That's just how it is. The crew reaches the site. It's a half-constructed temple on the outskirts of a sacred enclosure. Massive stone columns lie scattered like someone tried to build a giant's playground and gave up halfway through. You're assigned to the hauling team. Again. Someone hands you a pole attached to a sled. No wheels here, just pure dragging power, assisted by pouring water on the sand to reduce friction. Which sounds clever in theory, until you're the one doing the dragging and your arms feel like they're full of wet sand themselves. You yank, pull, groan, and slowly inch a limestone block forward, centimeter by centimeter. Hori's chanting something rhythmic next to you to keep the pace steady. You join in out of breathless desperation. It's either that or pass out. Every so often, a scribe walks by and makes notes on a piece of papyrus. He's clean, cool, and wearing jewelry. You try not to glare. That's the kind of job you'd want in your next life, assuming you get one. Ancient Egyptians took reincarnation seriously, after all. Work hard, die better. Still, it's not all bad. A priest swings by offering a splash of cool water from a decorated vessel. You sip carefully. It's warm, sure, but it doesn't taste like sand, so you count it as a win. Then comes the warning horn. A crew from another village is arriving late, and they're bringing more building materials. You groan audibly. More lifting. More dragging. More rope burns. As the noon sun reaches its peak, you consider crawling under one of the unfinished columns and pretending to be a decorative gargoyle. It might even work. You'd be shaded, for one. But no. Duty calls. You lift, you carry, you sweat like an ancient faucet. And by the time the midday bell sounds, a sharp clang from a bronze cymbal, you've lost all feeling in your shoulders and most of your faith in humanity. You collapse onto a woven mat someone's laid in a corner. It smells faintly of onions and goat, but it's horizontal, and that's all you need. As you suck down another warm swig of barley beer, you think to yourself, well, at least I haven't been eaten by a crocodile. Which, in ancient Egypt, is a genuine achievement. You hobble home like someone twice your age, which, by ancient Egyptian standards, means you might only have a decade or so left. The average life expectancy here isn't great. 35 if you're lucky, and probably fewer teeth than that. But right now, survival is the only thing on your mind, and maybe the dream of water cooler gossip, if water coolers had been invented. What you get instead is a clay jug and a cousin who won't stop talking about her neighbor's goat drama. You nod politely, trying not to fall asleep while standing. And then, nature calls. Oh no. Let's be clear, there are no modern conveniences here. No porcelain throne, no toilet paper, not even a friendly little stall. Just an earthenware pot tucked in a dark corner of the courtyard, and maybe a second one if your household is fancy. Privacy? Only if everyone else is busy or deeply asleep. You shuffle over, trying not to make eye contact with your neighbor, who is feeding chickens with a sort of focus that suggests she's pretending not to notice you. You nudge aside the woven curtain and crouch. This is, without a doubt, the worst part of your day. The toilet is a ceramic bowl set into a slab of limestone, slightly tilted for maximum drainage and minimum dignity. If you're in a wealthier home, there might even be a drainage channel leading to a cesspit, which someone will have to empty later. That someone could be you. You do your business, awkward and squatting, trying not to think about what's crawling underneath you. Ancient Egyptian bathrooms weren't designed for comfort. They were functional at best, terrifying at worst. And let's not even talk about the smell. For wiping, a smooth piece of broken pottery known as a ostrakhan, or in some cases, reeds. You try not to wince, or bleed, or both. Some households used sand and water afterward to wash up, though it's unclear how helpful that was. Historians still argue whether certain mixtures of natron, a salt-based cleaning agent, were part of toilet rituals or just overkill. Either way, you could definitely use a bath now. Unfortunately, that's also a problem. There's no shower waiting for you. Bathing happens with a ceramic basin, cold water, and a lot of splashing and scrubbing. You strip down behind a reed screen, pour a jug of water over yourself, and lather up with something that smells like crushed lotus and yesterday's goat. The soap is a mix of ash and fat. It does the job, but not without turning your skin into something that feels slightly more papyrus than person. Still, you're marginally cleaner now. Marginally. As you towel off with what is definitely just another piece of linen, you notice a small cut on your ankle from earlier. It's already red. Great. You dab on some honey and say a silent prayer to Imhotep, the deified doctor of ancient Egypt, that it doesn't turn into something gross. Back inside, your family is preparing dinner. The hearth crackles softly as someone tends a clay pot with a long stick, stirring what smells like lentils, garlic, and the hope that no sand blew into the mix. Spoiler, sand definitely blew into the mix. You help by chopping onions with a flint blade. The tears are real, not just from the onions, but from exhaustion, dehydration, and the fact that you still have another few hours of consciousness ahead. The household cat, yes, of course there's a cat, rubs against your legs. It's sleek, smug, and probably worshipped. Egyptians adored cats, and harming one, even accidentally, could land you in serious trouble. You give it a respectful nod and whisper, "Please don't eat my dinner when I'm not looking." You serve the meal on low trays, and everyone eats sitting on mats. Bread, lentils, and beer again. It's not a thrilling spread, but it's warm and filling, mostly. You bite into something crunchy. You tell yourself it was a pebble. You hope it was a pebble. Between bites, the older family members chat about temple gossip and irrigation problems. A nearby canal flooded last week, and now someone's papyrus fields are waterlogged. Meanwhile, your uncle still insists his neighbor's goat is cursed. That same goat bleated for 6 hours yesterday and hasn't made a sound since. Coincidence? Not in this timeline. You nod along, even as your head starts to loll. The heat, The beer, and the sheer physical drain of the day are catching up with you. But there's no lounging yet. Someone hands you a broom made of palm fibers and motions toward the courtyard. Cleaning is part of daily life. The dust doesn't care how tired you are. It just keeps falling, settling into cracks, sneaking into food, and coating every surface like a passive-aggressive roommate. As you sweep, a soft breeze picks up, carrying the scent of river mud and roasting fish from a nearby household. You pause for a moment, soaking in the sounds of dusk. Distant flutes, low conversation, the occasional honk from an angry goose. Yes, they're still awake. It's almost peaceful. Almost. But then your sibling yells that the storage room roof is leaking again, and the cat has knocked over the oil jar, and you remember you still haven't mended the tear in your only tunic. Ah, domestic bliss. Ancient Egyptian homes were small but tightly packed with life. Parents, grandparents, children, chickens, sometimes all sharing the same room. There's very little personal space, but plenty of routine. And, in a strange way, that's comforting. As night creeps in, your family lights an oil lamp. Shadows dance along the mud brick walls, and you realize that despite the sweat, the sand, the public toilets, and the insects the size of raisins, you made it through most of the day. Barely. You collapse onto your mat again, stretching out under the slowly darkening sky. A mosquito whines near your ear, and you slap at it blindly. Missed. Of course. But before sleep can claim you, someone clears their throat and asks if it's your turn to fetch water. It is. You groan. So now, by flickering lamplight and with feet that feel like they've walked to Nubia and back, you set off to fetch water. Again. The communal well isn't far, but that doesn't make it easier. You hoist a clay jar nearly as tall as your torso and head down a narrow, packed earth lane lit only by moonlight and the occasional torch mounted on a temple wall. Your sandals slap against the warm ground, and every third step you consider just dumping the jar into the Nile and telling everyone you got robbed by a particularly literate baboon. Unfortunately, you are nothing if not committed. And besides, that baboon probably has a tighter security schedule than you do. The well is surrounded by people. Of course it is. It's nighttime, the temperature's finally dipped below fireplace, and water is the lifeblood of the city. Literally. The Nile is why this civilization exists at all. Egyptians called it Itaru, meaning the river, and it was as sacred as it was essential. No Nile, no crops. No crops, no bread. No bread, no grumpy podcast episode for us to sleep through tonight. So yes, the well is busy. You take your place in line behind an older woman with arms like chisels and a teenager carrying 2 jars like she's late for an Olympic relay. There's an art to waiting here. You nod politely, keep your eyes on your feet, and try not to eavesdrop on the conversation next to you about a crocodile sighting near the ferry. Again. Now, ancient Egypt had a relatively advanced system of water distribution, especially in the larger cities. Some homes had small cisterns or rooftop storage, but for the average person, it's trips like this. Daily. Sometimes more than once. And those clay jars? They're not exactly ergonomic. Your turn. You lower the jar with a grunt, careful not to drop it. The rope creaks as you lower the bucket into the darkness. The splash echoes like it's coming from another world. You draw the bucket up again, muscles protesting the whole time, and pour it into your jar. You repeat this 5 times. 5. The jar now weighs approximately small pyramid, and your arms shake as you heft it up. Someone gives you a sympathetic look. You return it with a weak grin that probably reads more like, "This is how I die." You trudge home, taking the long route to avoid a group of boys chasing each other with reed spears. They're laughing barefoot, totally unaware of the full-body muscle ache you're experiencing just carrying water. One of them points at your jar and asks if it's full of beer. You shake your head. He looks deeply disappointed. By the time you reach the courtyard again, everyone is winding down. The dinner mats are cleared, the oil lamp is dimmed, and the cat is exactly where it shouldn't be, sitting directly on your sleeping mat with the face of someone who owns the place. Which, arguably, it does. You pour some of the precious water into the household basin. A younger cousin scurries over to wash their feet. Someone else grabs a rag to dab their face. The rest is set aside in sealed jugs for cooking tomorrow. And then finally, it's bedtime. You lie back on your mat and exhale. The night air moves sluggishly through the doorway, carrying with it the sense of oil, dust, and faintly charred bread. The mat is stiff. The pillow is a curved block of wood designed to cradle your neck in the most inconvenient way possible, and there's a definite pebble under your spine. But it's horizontal. It's still. It's glorious. Except you're not alone. A mosquito buzzes near your face. Then another. Then perhaps the entire extended family of mosquitoes you swatted at this morning has returned for revenge. You cover yourself with a linen sheet and try to ignore the bites forming already. Somewhere nearby, a donkey brays. Someone sneezes. The cat coughs up something suspicious in the corner. You close your eyes, and your mind starts to drift, only to be yanked back by your neighbor's baby wailing through the wall. Again. Let's talk about sleep in ancient Egypt. Historians still argue whether most commoners got a full night's rest or woke often to tend fires, children, or the occasional goat theft. What's clear is that 8 hours uninterrupted was not a thing. You slept when you could, where you could, surrounded by snoring relatives, hungry animals, and the ever-present background hum of insect life. Some wealthier families had separate sleeping quarters or could afford privacy screens. You have neither. Your entire family sleeps in the same room, heads facing the walls, feet toward the center. If someone rolls over, it's a domino effect. As your breathing slows, you hear someone whispering a prayer to Hathor, goddess of joy and protection. Another person is murmuring about bad dreams. Superstition runs deep here. People believe dreams are messages, omens, or warnings. You silently hope yours will just be quiet. You finally begin to fade, drifting somewhere between memory and imagination, when you're jarred awake by the unmistakable scuttling of a beetle across your ankle. You don't scream. You're too tired. You just gently nudge it away with a whisper of, "Not tonight, sacred dung roller." You roll to your side, shift the linen cover, and let the darkness press in. The Nile hums quietly in the distance, a deep and endless rhythm. Another day in ancient Egypt survived. Barely. Morning comes much too soon, again. But instead of sunlight, it's the sharp slap of someone's sandals on the courtyard floor that rouses you. You blink, disoriented, and for a moment you forget where or when you are. Then the smell of leftover lentils, sweaty linen, and last night's mosquito ambush reminds you, ancient Egypt. Day 2. Your body creaks as you sit up. Muscles that weren't sore yesterday have now joined the rebellion. You rub your neck, which still bears the shape of that wooden pillow like it's trying to brand you. The household is already stirring. Someone is grinding grain in the corner, using a flat stone and a heavy hand. The sound is rhythmic, soothing, and slightly gritty, like the texture of everything you own. You shuffle over to the water basin and splash your face with what's left from last night. It's lukewarm and vaguely suspicious, but at least it doesn't bite. Breakfast is exactly what you feared. Flatbread, beer, and maybe a fig if your uncle didn't already eat them all. You chew mechanically, trying not to think about how much sand is in the bread. Because yes, it's sandy. Ancient Egyptian bread is infamous for being full of grit thanks to the stone-ground flour. Archaeologists have found that many mummies had teeth worn down to stubs. You too are on your way. You glance at the rest of your household. Everyone is getting dressed, wrapping linen around themselves in practiced, sleepy movements. Clothing here is simple, white linen tunics for nearly everyone, though styles differ based on gender, class, and how fancy you're feeling. Jewelry, on the other hand, is where people go wild. Even the most modest folks have amulets, Eye of Horus charms, tiny scarabs, little carved anks. Your cousin, who's younger but infinitely more fashionable, is currently adjusting a beaded collar that jingles softly with every turn of her head. Protection, she says. And it looks good. She's not wrong. You get dressed slowly, feeling every inch of bruised muscle. Your tunic still has a tear in it. Guess who didn't mend it last night? You sigh and tie a rope belt around it like that makes everything okay. Outside, the street is waking up too. Smoke rises from hearths, vendors are yelling about fresh fish or spices blessed by the gods, which is definitely just dried mint. And a goat walks confidently into someone's kitchen like it pays rent. You step into the flow of people, joining the daily march toward the worksite. But today is different. You've been reassigned, lucky you, to the temple scribes. Sort of. It turns out they need extra hands to assist with the festival preparations. You're not sure what this means, but anything that doesn't involve dragging rocks sounds amazing. You arrive at the temple and are greeted by the unmistakable scent of incense, frankincense and myrrh mostly, with a side of burning reed and a dash of goat sweat from the nearby holding pen. Temples are the beating heart of Egyptian cities. They're religious, administrative, and economic hubs all in one. Today, it's buzzing with activity. Priests, dancers, workers, musicians, and one guy holding a bucket of cow blood who seems far too chipper for this hour. You're handed a brush and a pot of ochre paint. Decorate these, someone says, pointing to a row of wooden stele, upright slabs that'll be used in the upcoming ceremony. The designs are already drawn in faint charcoal lines. Your job is to fill them in. You dip the brush into the thick, red paint and get to work. The brush is more of a frayed stick, but you do your best. Lines of hieroglyphs start to glow with color under your careful hand. You have no idea what you're painting. For all you know, it says, "Ra was here." But it looks good. And it's peaceful. For once. A scribe sits nearby, muttering to himself while scratching notes onto a roll of papyrus. You watch him out of the corner of your eye, curious. Scribes are the elite. Literate, respected, and most importantly, not hauling limestone. You ask him a question, something simple about the stele or the ink, and he grunts back without looking up. "Don't smudge the Horus glyph," he says. "Last guy did, and now he's sweeping pigeon droppings." Duly noted. As you paint, you listen. The temple is full of sound, footsteps echoing off polished stone, the splash of water being poured over statues, chants drifting through open windows. You pass by a group of musicians rehearsing with sistrums, a kind of metal rattle shaped like a horseshoe. The rhythm is hypnotic. Festival preparations mean everyone's involved. There are dancers practicing slow, undulating movements with arms raised like lotus stems. There's a man trying to stack offering baskets while fending off an aggressive ibis. There's even someone carving a new ceremonial spoon. You pause to admire it. It's shaped like a swimming girl holding a lotus flower. Fancy. Suddenly, a sharp whistle. It's the priest in charge, shouting something about the missing sacred pectoral. Everyone stops. You freeze, brush still in hand. Turns out, someone misplaced the jeweled necklace meant for the statue of the goddess. The room is now full of frantic muttering and the soft rustle of panic. Historians still debate whether these temple ceremonies were deeply spiritual or mostly for show. Maybe both. What's clear is that messing up is a very bad idea. You quietly return your paintbrush and sidestep out of the room. Fast. On your way back through the temple, you pass a chamber where offerings are being prepared. Beer, bread, onions, and bundles of papyrus. Someone singing softly in a language you don't recognize, possibly a dialect from Nubia or further south. Egypt was a cultural crossroads, after all. Merchants and artisans from all over traveled the Nile, bringing language, goods, and excellent bread recipes. You step outside into the sun again, momentarily blinded. But even with the glare, you're smiling. Because for a few precious hours, you didn't lift anything, bleed, or cry. That counts as a win. You barely make it 3 steps out of the temple before someone calls your name. Well, not your real name, more like, hey, you with the paint on your elbow. You look down. Yep. Elbow, forearm, and somehow your knee. You're a walking ochre explosion. The person calling you over is one of the overseers. He's got a reed pen tucked behind his ear and the permanently exhausted expression of someone who's dealt with too many festival logistics and not enough naps. Change of plans, he says. You're helping with the sacred animal preparations. You blink. The what? But he's already walking. You follow him through a warren of temple courtyards and narrow corridors until you reach a small enclosure. And that's when you see them, the sacred animals. There's a cow with perfectly combed hair and what you think might be gold leaf horn caps. A troop of monkeys, each wearing tiny collars. And at the center, a cat lounging on a plush cushion, looking like it's just written a particularly scathing scroll review of your life choices. In ancient Egypt, animals weren't just companions. They were living symbols of the gods. Cats for Batet, ibises for Thoth, crocodiles for Sobuk. These animals were housed in temples, tended to by priestly staff, and sometimes even mummified after death. There were literal cemeteries for cats. You'd think that would comfort the cat currently judging you. It does not. Your job, it turns out, is to help clean the animal enclosure. You're handed a broom made of bundled reeds and a small clay bowl of scented oil. Wipe down the cow's legs, someone says. She stepped in something divine. You crouch, unsure whether to laugh or cry, and begin wiping the cow's dainty ankles. The animal flicks her ears in polite disdain, but otherwise lets you proceed. The scent is oddly pleasant, lotus and pine resin with just a whisper of barnyard. As you clean, a priest nearby is preparing offerings. He arranges small dishes of bread and beer on a carved stone tray, murmuring invocations as he goes. You can't make out all the words, but it's clear this isn't just snack time. It's symbolic communion. The animals are considered incarnations or messengers of gods. Feeding them is like feeding the divine. Then there's a minor commotion. One of the monkeys has escaped and is now hanging upside down from a statue of Anubis. It chitters at you like it knows you're new and therefore the least intimidating authority figure in the room. Which, to be fair, is true. You attempt to lure it down with a fig, whispering promises of better snacks and zero responsibility. It works, sort of. The monkey grabs the fig and promptly hurls it at your face. Sacred Monkey 1. You 0. Eventually, a handler retrieves the creature and the situation settles. You return to your cleaning duties with what little dignity you have left. While you work, someone tells you the story of Apis, the sacred bull believed to be the earthly embodiment of Ta. When an Apis bull died, it was mummified with extreme care and buried in a lavish tomb at Saqqara. The priests would then search for its successor, a bull with specific markings, considered a divine sign. These rituals were taken incredibly seriously. Historians still debate whether every temple followed the same protocols or if regional cults had their own animal customs. What's clear is that these creatures were not just for show. They held political, spiritual, and even economic significance. You pause to let that sink in as the cow you just cleaned relieves herself directly in front of you. Divinity, it seems, doesn't excuse anyone from biology. After a few hours, the animal caretakers thank you with a small piece of date cake. Dense, sticky, and unexpectedly delicious. You savor it, sitting under the shade of a sycamore fig tree. The branches sway gently in the breeze, and for the first time all day, you feel vaguely cool. Nearby, a group of children are playing a game involving tossing knucklebones and chanting something about crocodile tales. You don't know the rules, but their laughter is infectious. One of them throws a bone too far, and it lands beside you. You toss it back, and they wave in thanks, clearly deciding you're now part of the game whether you like it or not. You take a deep breath. The smells of the temple compound drift around you. Incense, dust, animal musk, oil, and baked bread. In a strange way, it's comforting. It's not your time, not your world, and yet you've survived long enough to learn how it works. Mostly. Eventually, a bell rings, signaling the end of this shift. You wipe your hands on your tunic, because who even cares at this point, and head out of the temple grounds. The sun is dipping toward the horizon again, casting a warm glow over the city. You walk slowly, savoring the feeling of not having to lift or paint or polish a single thing. Back in your neighborhood, the evening routine has begun. People are sweeping courtyards, heating dinner, lighting oil lamps. You pass a woman weaving baskets, her fingers moving so fast they blur. She smiles without looking up. You smile back. You're home. Well, as much as a sleep-deprived time traveler in ancient linen can be. The night deepens, but sleep is a stranger. You lie on your wooden headrest again, staring at the ceiling painted with lotus flowers and stars. Your mind drifts back to the day's sights and sounds, the sacred animals, the scent of incense, the sticky date cake that somehow saved your dignity. Outside, the city hums softly. The distant croak of frogs from the Nile marshes mixes with the chatter of night watchmen and the occasional bark of a dog. You breathe in the cool night air, thick with the smell of river mud and crushed herbs. As you settle into the rhythm of the night, you remember the ancient Egyptian bedtime rituals. Before dozing off, many Egyptians would anoint themselves with fragrant oils, myrrh, cinnamon, or cedarwood, believing these scents invited peaceful dreams and protected against nightmares. You can almost imagine the soft scratch of a reed comb through tangled hair, or the delicate whisper of linen sheets. In wealthier homes, people would sleep on raised beds made from palm wood, often adorned with linen covers and small pillows. Those wooden pillows are infamous, hard, uncomfortable, and designed to keep the head elevated, possibly to avoid insects or preserve elaborate hairstyles. You recall your own pillow's rebellious impression on your neck. Some say these pillows inspired the modern neck brace, though historians still debate whether their use was practical or symbolic. Your thoughts wander to sleep patterns. Unlike modern 24/7 schedules, many ancient Egyptians likely followed segmented sleep, two shorter sleeps interrupted by an hour or two awake in the middle of the night. This waking period was sometimes used for quiet prayer, storytelling, or even intimate conversations. Imagine waking up naturally, in darkness, with the stars overhead, and having time to muse or meditate before returning to slumber. You probably wouldn't last a night with that waking pattern. You'd be up scrolling on your invisible iPhone. Speaking of nighttime, you remember the Egyptian belief in dreams as messages from the gods. People kept dream journals and sought interpreters, hoping to decode cryptic symbols. Dreaming of a crocodile might mean one thing to a farmer, and something else entirely to a priest. Sometimes, animals, objects, or even colors in dreams were seen as omens, guidance for decisions or warnings. You chuckle softly. Your dream last night, if it had any meaning, probably foretold that you'd be smeared in ochre paint and chased by a mischievous monkey. By now, your eyelids feel heavy. The soft hum of the night, the gentle breeze, and your wandering thoughts conspire to lull you. As your mind drifts, you recall the smell of lotus incense in the temple and the faint jingle of the beaded collar your cousin wore. Tomorrow promises another day of unfamiliar tasks and unexpected adventures. But for now, the steady pulse of the Nile night wraps around you like a familiar shawl. Sleep takes you gently, as if carried on the river's slow current. Dawn breaks again, and with it comes a new challenge, the marketplace. You step into the chaos of vendors hawking their wares, fresh fish glistening in the sun, piles of dates and figs, baskets overflowing with vegetables, and the unmistakable smell of fermented beer wafting through the air. Marketplaces in ancient Egypt were lively places, bustling with people from all walks of life. Farmers, artisans, and traders gathered here to exchange goods, news, and gossip. You can't help but notice the variety of languages and accents, reflecting Egypt's role as a crossroads between Africa, the Near East, and the Mediterranean. One vendor, an elderly man with a crooked smile, beckons you over with a basket of oddly shaped gourds. "Good for the digestion," he says, winking. You try not to wince at the phrase, knowing your stomach hasn't adjusted to all the new foods. You wander through stalls selling everything from papyrus scrolls to cosmetic kohl, the black eyeliner Egyptians used not just for beauty but also to ward off infections and the glare of the sun. It's both practical and fashionable, a trend that somehow never quite faded out. You spot a curious item, a strange cone-shaped lump sitting on a vendor's table. The seller explains it's fatty incense, made from a mix of animal fats and aromatic resins. Apparently, burning it releases a fragrance so strong it can chase away pests, and perhaps nosy neighbors. You think of the temple incense and wonder if there's a sacred version of this too. Moving on, you notice a group of women selling woven mats and cloth dyed with indigo and saffron. Their hands move with practiced ease, knotting and twisting threads into beautiful patterns. You try to imagine how much time and patience it takes to create each piece. Nearby, a man demonstrates a strange contraption, an early type of lock and key, used to secure chests and doors. Locks like these were prized possessions, signifying wealth and security. You chuckle at the thought of someone in your neighborhood trying to pick one open with a hairpin. Historians still argue whether the locks were genuinely effective or more symbolic, like a status symbol to deter thieves. You meander toward a food stall where the scent of freshly baked bread mingles with honey and sesame. You buy a small loaf and sit on a nearby bench, watching the market swirl around you. The noise, the colors, the smells. It's overwhelming but oddly soothing. A child runs past, clutching a small wooden figurine, a cat no less. It reminds you of the sacred animals from the temple and their strange, important place in Egyptian life. As you finish your bread, you overhear a conversation about the Nile's annual flood, a natural event that shaped everything from farming schedules to religious festivals. The flood was unpredictable, sometimes generous, sometimes stingy. It brought fertile silt, but also anxiety. Farmers prayed for just the right amount. Too little, and crops failed. Too much, and homes were swept away. You think about how precarious life is here. The balance between survival and disaster is a tightrope walk. Yet, amidst it all, people laugh, barter, dance, and dream. You're reminded again that you probably wouldn't last a day here. Not just because of the physical demands, but because every moment is a delicate negotiation with nature, society, and the gods. But you're still here. For now. The sun climbs higher, and you find yourself pulled into a quieter part of town, an artisan's quarter where craftspeople shape everything from jewelry to furniture. You stop by a workshop filled with the rhythmic tapping of chisels carving delicate hieroglyphs into alabaster. One craftsman, a middle-aged man with soot-smudged arms, invites you over to watch him work on a small statue of Hathor, the goddess of music and joy. You notice the way his tools catch the light and the patience in his slow, deliberate movements. Crafting in ancient Egypt wasn't just about aesthetics, it was an act of devotion. Every piece was meant to honor the gods or preserve the memory of a loved one. The idea that something you carve today might survive thousands of years both humbles and terrifies you. Nearby, a woman weaves intricate gold threads into a collar, her fingers flying so fast you can barely follow. This collar isn't just jewelry, it's a symbol of status, protection, and even magical power. You wonder if the wearer really believes in its protective qualities, or if it's mostly for show. The craftsmen talk casually about their tools, copper chisels, stone hammers, and a surprisingly sophisticated knowledge of metallurgy. You marvel at their skill, considering the limitations of their era. It's a reminder that innovation isn't a modern invention, but a timeless human trait. Amidst the artisans, you overhear a debate about the origins of certain techniques. Historians still argue whether some metalworking skills came from Nubian neighbors or developed independently in Egypt. You watch a young apprentice nervously try to replicate a complex pattern. The older craftsman smiles gently and corrects his grip, reminding you that mastery takes time, something you're painfully aware of in this ancient world. The air smells faintly of resin and hot metal. It's both warm and a little harsh, but oddly comforting in the way familiar workshop smells always are. As the afternoon wanes, you think about how these artisans contribute to daily life, not just through beautiful objects, but by connecting people to their beliefs, their history, and each other. You tuck a tiny carved scarab, a symbol of rebirth, into your pocket, a small reminder that maybe, just maybe, you'll survive another day here. You step away from the artisan quarter, following the faint sound of flowing water toward the Nile's edge. The river, that eternal lifeline, moves steadily, its surface shimmering with the afternoon sun. You dip your fingers into the cool current, marveling at how the same river has sustained countless generations before you. Along the banks, fishermen cast their nets with practiced ease. Their boats, long, narrow reed vessels, glide silently, almost like whispers on the water. You watch as they haul in their catch, tilapia, catfish, and a few mysterious species you don't recognize. Fishing here isn't just a livelihood, it's a ritual, intertwined with prayers to Hapi, the god of the Nile flood. You notice small offerings placed on the boats, tiny clay figurines, bits of bread and incense, all meant to ensure a bountiful catch. Nearby, women gather at communal washing spots, scrubbing clothes on smooth stones and chatting softly. Their laughter blends with the splash of water and the calls of birds nesting in the reeds. You pause to observe a peculiar practice. Some fishermen wear small amulets shaped like fish, believed to grant protection and luck. This blend of practicality and superstition feels both foreign and familiar, like carrying a lucky charm today. The Nile's floodplain stretches out, a patchwork of green fields and mud huts. You watch farmers tend to their crops, barley, flax, and emmer wheat, carefully timing their planting to the river's ebb and flow. The cycle of flooding and retreat is the heartbeat of Egyptian agriculture. Without it, the land would be barren desert. But too much water brings destruction. It's a delicate balance that defines life here. You recall that the ancient Egyptians invented some of the earliest irrigation systems to manage the floodwaters, including canals and basins. These innovations transformed the land and allowed villages to thrive. Historians still debate the exact origins and extent of these irrigation techniques, but their impact is undeniable. As the sun dips low, casting long shadows, you reflect on the symbiotic relationship between people and nature here. The Nile is not just a river, it's a deity, a giver of life, and sometimes a merciless force. You wrap your arms around yourself as a gentle breeze rises, carrying the scent of wet earth and papyrus. You wonder if you'd ever grow accustomed to this rhythm, this blend of reverence and survival. For now, though, you are a visitor, learning to listen to the ancient river's timeless song. The evening shadows lengthen as you return to the village, where the smell of cooking fires mingles with the cool desert air. You follow your nose to a small gathering where families share their evening meal, simple but hearty dishes prepared with care and tradition. Bread is the staple, often unleavened and dense, served alongside stews made from lentils, onions, garlic, and sometimes fish from the Nile. You take a cautious bite of a bowl of lentil soup, savoring the earthy flavors and the warmth it brings. Food in ancient Egypt was about more than sustenance. It was a social glue, a ritual, and sometimes even an offering to the gods. Meals often included beer, a mildly fermented brew made from barley, which was so common that it sometimes doubled as currency. You watch as people pass around woven baskets of figs and dates, nature's candy. These fruits provided much-needed sweetness, and they were also symbols of fertility and prosperity. In the flickering light of oil lamps, elders recount tales of gods and heroes. You listen as a storyteller weaves a gentle myth about Osiris's return from the underworld, a tale full of magic and rebirth. Boring Greek myths for sleep, why Hermes invented the first pair of sneakers. Sorry, got sidetracked. Back to the feast. You notice how the conversation shifts to daily life, odd laws, peculiar punishments, and customs you wouldn't expect. For example, some towns had rules against loud noises at night, to keep the peace. You imagine how that might go today with a neighborhood party. Historians still debate how strictly such laws were enforced, but they provide a glimpse into the social fabric. You also learn about peculiar punishments for minor offenses, like making a noisy neighbor clean the temple steps or repair public walls. Instead of harsh penalties, these community-centered corrections reflect a surprisingly restorative approach. You finish your meal feeling full and oddly content, even if you know the day's challenges will return with the sun. As night falls again, the village settles into quiet rhythms, soft murmurs, the occasional bark, and the hum of insects. You think about how food connects past and present, a universal comfort amid uncertainty. Your eyelids grow heavy, and you feel the gentle tug of sleep. The day's sights, sounds, and smells blend into a soothing lullaby, carrying you toward rest. Morning light filters softly through the reed mats covering the windows, stirring you awake to another day in ancient Egypt. You find yourself drawn toward the temple district, where the scent of incense and the murmur of prayers float through the air like a calming melody. Temples here are more than places of worship. They're hubs of community life, education, and sometimes even medicine. You watch priests in their white linen robes perform rituals, chanting prayers to gods you barely recognize but somehow feel a connection to. The priest's duties include maintaining sacred knowledge, like medical texts and astronomical observations. Their libraries, though limited compared to today's standards, hold wisdom passed down through generations. You're struck by the balance of science and spirituality, a combination that shaped daily life. A temple scribe invites you to observe their meticulous writing on papyrus scrolls. The smooth brushstrokes, the faded ink, and the careful symbols make you appreciate the delicate art of record-keeping. Imagine copying these scrolls by hand, without modern pens or computers. No wonder scribes were highly respected. You learn about the role of the god Thoth, the divine scribe and inventor of writing, believed to have gifted humans with the ability to communicate complex ideas across time. His symbol, the ibis bird, appears everywhere, reminding people of knowledge and wisdom. Amidst this solemnity, you discover that temples also served as centers for healing. Priests doubled as doctors, using herbal remedies, spells, and even early forms of surgery. You're intrigued by treatments using honey as an antiseptic and willow bark as a painkiller, early ancestors of modern medicine. Historians still argue how much these healing practices relied on magic versus empirical observation. Outside the temple, you glimpse musicians playing soft melodies on lyres and flutes, filling the air with gentle sounds. Music wasn't just entertainment, it was an offering, a way to soothe gods and humans alike. As you leave the temple district, the sun begins its slow descent. You realize the day has been rich with learning, wonder, and the quiet hum of devotion. You pause for a moment, thinking about how this blend of faith, knowledge, and community shaped one of the world's greatest civilizations, and how it still whispers to us through the ages. As twilight deepens, you wander into a quieter neighborhood where families settle into their evening routines. You observe children playing simple games with sticks and stones, their laughter soft and carefree despite the hardships surrounding them. It's a reminder that even here, joy finds a way. Nearby, women prepare ointments and cosmetics using recipes passed down for generations. You watch as a mother carefully mixes crushed malachite, a green mineral, with animal fat to create eye paint. This wasn't just about beauty. The malachite protected against the harsh desert sun and deterred pesky flies, an early kind of sunscreen and insect repellent rolled into one. You try to imagine rubbing this gritty paste near your eyes and wonder if you'd get used to the texture and smell. The local barber sets up a small station, offering haircuts and shaves. You notice the precision with which he uses his bronze razors and the gentle way he massages oils into the scalp afterward. Grooming was an important daily ritual, both for hygiene and spiritual purity. Some people even believed that well-groomed hair could keep evil spirits at bay. Historians still argue how widespread these beliefs truly were, but the evidence in art and texts is hard to ignore. You pass by a home where a family gathers around a fire, sharing stories about the day. The father recounts tales of distant lands beyond Egypt's borders, places full of strange animals and mysterious customs. You wonder how much of these stories were true and how much were just bedtime tales spun to inspire wonder. As night falls fully, the village quiets. Lamps flicker softly in homes, casting warm pools of light that seem to push back the vast darkness of the desert. You notice how important these small lights are, not just for seeing but for comfort, a gentle resistance to loneliness. Your mind drifts to the stars, which here are not just distant points of light, but part of a grand cosmic story. The Egyptians charted the heavens carefully, believing that their souls would join the stars after death. You feel a calm settle over you, a sense of connection to these ancient lives, complex, vibrant, and surprisingly familiar. Tomorrow you remind yourself, you'll wake again to the rhythm of the Nile, the hum of the market, and the slow unfolding of life as it was thousands of years ago. But for now, you let the soft darkness carry you gently toward rest. The night deepens, and the village sleeps beneath a blanket of stars. You lie back on your simple mat, feeling the cool air brushing against your skin, and the faint scent of papyrus and desert herbs wrapping around you like a lullaby. You reflect on the extraordinary day you've lived, immersed in a world both distant and intimately human. The bustling market, the careful artisans, the sacred temples, and the gentle rituals of daily life. All these threads weave together into a tapestry of ancient Egypt that's far richer than any textbook. You remember the peculiar punishments that replaced harsh justice with community care, the fishermen's superstitions mingling with their practical skills, and the healing practices that combine science with spirituality. The contrasts and contradictions of this civilization feel like a warm, familiar melody. As your breath slows, your thoughts drift to the timeless Nile, how it nourishes and demands respect, the lifeblood of a civilization shaped by water and sand. You imagine the stars above, the same ones that guided travelers, inspired poets, and cradled the dreams of pharaohs. It's tempting to romanticize this ancient world, but you also carry with you the quiet reality of its challenges, the scorching sun, the relentless work, the fragile balance between order and chaos. Yet, in that balance, there is beauty and resilience. A reminder that, no matter the era, human beings have always sought meaning, connection, and peace. So as your eyelids grow heavier and the hum of the night surrounds you, allow yourself to drift gently away from this time and place. Let the slow cadence of history soothe your mind and carry you softly into sleep. Know that the echoes of this ancient world will remain with you, quiet and steady, as you journey through dreams.